one story of my life, which was a very important story in my life. In December of 1938, I got very sick. I was 4 years old, and I guess you would call it the flu today, but I couldn't keep anything on my stomach, and I was real weak and stayed in bed all the time. My dad asked me what I wanted for Christmas, and I said I wanted a kitten. And he said if I got better, he would tell Santa Claus that he would bring me a kitten. I did get a little bit better, but not much. Then one day my dad said to me, "Come on, we're going to get dressed, and I'm going to take you to the A&P store. A mother cat had kittens." So he carried me all the way to the A&P store. It was about 2 or 3 blocks away. And there in a box was a mother cat and her kittens. My dad said to pick one out of the kittens out, and when it was old enough to leave its mother, I could have it, but only if I promised to get better. I picked out a little gray and white kitten and went back home. I tried to feel better. I took my medicine and I rested, but didn't get much better. On Christmas morning, I was too sick to open my presents from Santa Claus. My dad had carried me out to the couch in front of the room, in the front room, where the Christmas tree was. After all the presents were opened, there was no kitten. I tried so hard to get better because all I wanted was the gray and white kitten. I just knew it was my fault for being so sick that I didn't get my kitten. I asked my dad to please carry me back to bed, and he said, "Oh, wait a minute. I think Santa Claus left a present for you in our bedroom." When he came out carrying a box with holes in it, I knew it was my kitten, and sure enough, there was my very own kitten. I forgot all about being sick and did nothing but take care of my kitten. My mother asked me what I was going to call the kitty, and I said Twinkle, because I wished so hard that my wish came true. So Twinkle was his name, after the little rhyme, "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. I wish I may, wish I might, get the wish I wish tonight." And I did get my wish. Another reason I liked the name Twinkle was because it was Christmas and all the lights on the trees seemed to twinkle. Everyone thought that was a stupid name for a cat, but he was my Twinkle, and I still have Twinkle's picture in my locket. Twinkle and I were inseparable. I never loved anything so much as I loved that cat, and I just knew he loved me too. I used to put doll clothes on him and dress him up like a baby and put him in my doll buggy, and we would go for a walk around the block. Twinkle used to walk to school with me every day, and when I came out of school at 3 o'clock, there was Twinkle waiting for me, and we would walk home together. His tail was always sticking up in the air with a little hook on the end of it, and I would hold on to that hook of his tail, and that's how we walked home together. Best friends. Twinkle was a little spoiled cat. My mom would always feed him baby beef liver or kidneys and scraps of steak. He grew into a large tomcat. There was a dog that lived next door across the hall from us. His name was Toby Dickey. Twinkle would chase that dog every time that dog was out. Toby Dickey got to be so scared of the dog that Mrs. Day, Toby's owner, had to carry Toby out and pick him up and carry him back to the house. As Twinkle got older, he liked to stay out all night, but sometimes when he came home in the morning, he would be a mess because he would have gotten into a fight. And I always bathed his wounds and took care of him, but he would go back out at night and get into more fights. One morning he came home and his tail was almost off. You could see the brown bone in his tail. His tail was hanging on just by a small piece of skin. I got the adhesive tape and taped his tail back on and bandaged him up. We wouldn't let him out of the house until he was better. The tail grew back on eventually. Being a big tomcat, he wasn't happy staying in the house all the time. When he got better, he really wanted to get back out at night, so we let him out. For a little while he was fine. He didn't get into fights. My dad said he probably had a fight with a dog when he was almost lost his tail. His ears were always cut in two. My brother used to call him Scarface. One morning, Twinkle wasn't on the back porch waiting for me to let him He never came home that day or the next. I was worried sick. Then a week, 2 weeks went by, no Twinkle. Then a month and another month, and everyone said he must have gotten into a fight and died. But I knew he would be back home. I never gave up hope because I knew there was a bond between us, and I would never stop loving him because I loved him so much he would come back home to me. One night we were all sitting in the kitchen eating chips. They were French fries. And we were all sitting at the kitchen table, and I started talking about Twinkle. And my dad said in a stern voice, "Irene, that cat isn't coming back." And I said, "Oh, yes, he is coming back. He loves me." And as God is my witness, that very moment, we all heard a meow at the back porch. Let's see. And there was Twinkle after 4 or 5 months of being away. The whole family was happy to see him. He came home, and I always knew in my heart that he had come home. I never gave up hope. Twinkle never left us again. He went out at night, but was always there the next morning. When I was about 12 and a half, my mother and dad bought their first home in 1946. It was a 2-family flat in Detroit on the east side, about 5 miles from our old house. One day, the day we moved, I held Twinkle in my arms so as we drove to our new house. Twinkle didn't like the drive because he had never been in a car before, and he didn't like the new house. He was scared because everything was strange to him. I kept him in for about a week and then let him out in the backyard when I was home to the new surroundings. One day I thought he was used to the new house and in the backyard, and I let him out, and he didn't come. Every once in a while I'd call again, "No Twinkle." He ran away. I thought, no, not again. Sure that this time was never coming home. A week had gone by, and I just knew I'd never see him again. I went back to my old neighborhood to see Shirley and Mrs. West. My dad still had the candy store in the old neighborhood. So after Shirley went and I went to the store, my dad said, "Why don't you go to the old house? Sometimes dogs and cats go back to their old houses." So I went back and called for Twinkle, but he wasn't there. I kept going back every time I went back to the old neighborhood. And one day, there sitting on the front window sill of our old house was Twinkle. He had walked all the way back to the old house. 2 friends were united once again. Then I took Twinkle back home to the house, to our new house. He never left again. Twinkle died in a lilac bush out in our backyard when I was 17. I lost my best friend.